again, it's the challenge is we don't know the answer is our usual standard, a dictum that I was taught for so many years. And as we call things idiopathic, I've always said we're the idiots because we've been so blind for so long. And we hadn't realized the secret is really right in front of us and been staring at us for so long.
Perfect. Well, welcome. Thanks. It seems like I just talked to you the other day.
I know it seems like yesterday, but I've been really enjoying all of the you've been sharing. So thank you.
Sure. No, it's my pleasure. Well, anyway, let's get going here. I know it's always, I always feel like I'm imposing on people and I take some of their time up, but you've been out there advocating for diet and lifestyle, but can you just tell people a little bit about your background, for those that aren't familiar with you?
Well, I'm a standard American doctor who finished residency in OBGYN in 1990. Prior to that, I did a year of internal medicine, but I switched to OB. And then I went on to do a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and fertility. I'm a fertility specialist. I've been practicing standard fertility medicine for 30 years nearly. It's kind of, wow, zips by so fast. It's pretty crazy. But as a fertility specialist, I kind of found that what we traditionally did wasn't helping so many people. And probably around 15 years ago, I tripped across the paleo diet and then the keto diet. And now almost 11 years, I've been carnivore and have been sharing keto carnivore for the last 10 years as much as I can. And I think I'm working to ride the wave even higher because I've seen the amazing changes in so many people in this world. So as I see in you, inspired by you and many others in this world, I'm, again, practicing basic reproductive endocrinology and fertility full time, but this is really my full-time inspiration is helping people heal via mental changes and how they, and then what they eat, which I think is so important. And then also what we do with our bodies and in motion and things.
Yeah, as a fertility specialist, obviously you deal with people with infertility, I suppose, and then there's a lot of other issues, and it's not just a women's issue. Obviously men have a equal, if not equal, maybe at least a significant contribution to the fertility stuff. What is the traditional, like you said, it wasn't working very well, and so just walk us through like the normal person comes in maybe suffering from infertility, or I don't know if you touch into PCOS or something like that, but what are you seeing? How do we traditionally respond to it, and where are we falling short with that?
Well, most infertility is considered unexplained or idiopathic. There's the metabolic syndromes, the PCOS, the anovulation. There's a lot of endometriosis, uterine fibroids, but ultimately, we don't really know the majority of the causes. That's what we've been taught essentially, and our treatment is either with pills and shots to help with ovulation, and then either intrauterine insemination and in vitro fertilization. And the average outcome for an IVF cycle is in the 30 to 40s, but that depends on the patient population. We're seeing so many women in the 30s to 40s, but there's more and more in the 20s that we're dealing with diminished ovarian reserve, which is, I believe it's associated with metabolic disorders or diabetes and prediabetes, although they don't have the diagnosis. They have this sort of unknown cause everyone's walking around with. Fallopian tubes are open, the uterus is normal, regular menstrual cycles, and then the sperm looks normal, which is very common. Yet on the other side of that, we're seeing so many men with diminished sperm function, quality, numbers, motility. And again, for them, it falls up into the unknown cause. And so the Western side is either intrauterine insemination, in vitro fertilization, or some ovulatory methods with either shots or pills to try to help them out. But it's an emotional and very difficult process because so many people fail. And that's been really difficult for everyone.
Yeah. What is the traditional? I mean, I just think, I'm thinking about this, we have all these idiopathic diseases, which to me, it means we're kind of idiotic because we can't figure it out. That's why we're just not smart enough to figure it out, or we're ignoring some obvious things, which I think, obviously, you and I think probably similarly that probably our environment and nutrition being a large part of that plays a role. What is the traditional success rates with infertility? Again, it's going to depend on obviously what you're dealing with, but I mean, as a whole, how successful is somebody who comes in with just a random person off the street says, "Hey, I can't have a baby. I've been trying for 3 years and nothing's worked." What is their likelihood of achieving success through the standard practice methods?
So in general, if you're in the 30 to 40 range and it goes down as you age, for standard intercourse trying for about a year, you're probably looking at about a 5% per month chance of pregnancy and delivery. When we add some ovulatory medications like Clomid or Letrozole pills to help a woman's ovulation, and then insemination at the same time, it boosts it up to about 10% to 20%. And then in vitro ups the odds of delivery somewhere between 20 and 40%. But as the ovarian reserve drops, diminished ovarian reserve, a lower anti-Mullerian hormone under 1, it goes down even further. And it's the challenge is we don't know the answer is our usual standard dictum that I was taught for so many years. And as we call things idiopathic, I've always said we're the idiots because we've been so blind for so long. And we hadn't realized the secret is really right in front of us and been staring at us for so long.
What is, with, you said there's associations with, like obviously PCS, we see metabolic syndrome often seen. I mean, those associations are well known. It's not like it's a secret. I mean, I used to see, I know like frozen shoulder and orthopedics is clearly associated with diabetes, and yet we don't really delve any farther and say, what's the underlying mechanisms behind this? If you were to work up patients with PCS and just say, hey, let's check maybe a fasting insulin level or something, something that would indicate metabolic disease. I mean, have you done that? Is that part of your workup, I suppose?
Well, we're always looking for PCOS, like or polycystic ovarian syndrome, metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, diabetes. We look at hemoglobin A1C. We don't look at insulin levels that much. We look at glucose levels. We look at a lot of liver functions and thyroid functions. There's so much thyroid dysfunction in women for sure. I think polycystic ovarian syndrome is just another pre-diabetic or metabolic syndrome that even women with regular menstrual cycles and don't have any of the classic signs or symptoms of PCOS, people think it's obesity, but 50% of women with PCOS are thin. I would say the majority actually have regular menstrual cycles, and they don't necessarily have excessive hair growth and things like that. But I do believe it's singularly, we're looking at the same cause of all these things, but they manifest in different disease labels, if you would. So I would say that I'm not necessarily looking for the diagnostic test that tells them what they have, because I know if they have irregular cycles, it's more likely a polycystic ovarian syndrome or an anovulation. And then if they have painful periods, then we may be looking at things like endometriosis. But the leading symptom of infertility is just you're not able to either get pregnant or you're getting pregnant but miscarrying. And the workup for us is so normal in so many ways.
Let me just switch gears a little bit. You said, years ago you discovered the paleo diet. Why? I mean, what compelled you to commence with your diet? I mean, were you not doing well your own self, or was it something specifically to treat your patients with, or what got you interested?
Well, I haven't been doing well for a long time, but I didn't know it and understand the why part of it. I started CNY Fertility Center about 25 years ago, upstate New York. I'm a kid from LA who got out of the craziness and came up to the farmlands, essentially. As I started and delved more into a standard fertility care, I began to delve into some mindfulness, yoga, meditation, acupuncture, sort of the non-traditional Western treatments. And while I was doing that, about 15 years ago, a number of my patients were doing the paleo diet and getting pregnant despite all the things that we were intervening on. And, I came up to like, what is that? I had no idea what that. I had done Atkins and Weight Watchers, and I myself had done a lot of exercise workout. I triathlete for years. And I suffered personally migraines, bowel problems, and then subsequently arthritis, psoriasis, eczema, bowel bleeding, hemorrhoids, kidney stones, neuroses in some ways. I think I'm a little that anyway. But as I delve into learning more about it, I'm like, shit, there's something here that's amazing, but I didn't understand it. I personally did all of this. And then about 11 years ago, I went carnivore. I was seeing, guys like you talking about being, looking buff and healthy and well. And they did this carnivore diet. And I'm like, what is this? I did it after paleo and keto. Personally, my problems didn't go away, got better. And then for me, carnivore, bingo, 4 weeks, gone, everything. And I've been diligent on this for years now. And I've seen so many of our patients do exactly this, and a game changer. Obviously, so many people look at this and think it's, ridiculous, doesn't make any sense. But I'm so passionate about it. I write a lot about it. I've got several books on it and guides on it. And it's probably the first and last thing my conversation with the patient is, because a 44-year woman, no eggs, IVF 4 times, does carnivore, and 4 months later gets pregnant, delivers a baby naturally, despite the fact that we would tell her there's no way, you need donor eggs, go adopt. I've been seeing such amazing changes.
Yeah, that really is remarkable. And I've seen a number, and I don't have a sort of a specialty towards reproductive endocrinology or fertility, but I've seen a number of women and men that say I was either infertile and it's gotten better by switching over to the diet. I guess this is a hard sell. I mean, how do you approach someone who comes in your office that is infertile and say, hey, why don't you just start eating, meat for 6 months? How does that go?
Well, I sort of stealthily get into this conversation, but first of all, I get their general history and what's been going on, and I always ask about their diet. I ask about their height and their weight and their other medical conditions that give me a little bit of a clue what's going on. And the usual answer to the question, what do you eat? And it's usually I eat healthy. And I eat organic, grain-free, and clean. So first of all, getting an answer from any of us of what is it exactly you're eating, because what I then get into, I said, listen, I'm here just to get the facts and understand what you're putting in your body that might be a clue to help you conceive and deliver a baby. 1 is naturally, and 2 is with assisted reproduction, because 1 is I believe if you're doing any fertility treatments, we can help with that. And on the other side, I say, listen, you can do this for 2 to 4 weeks. And I've had people that suddenly call up and say, we're pregnant. And so it's the inspiration of the conversation that I'm more putting this forward as a coaching and cheerleading model, rather than, you're not eating the right things and you're doing it wrong and you got to change it up. I often ask the question, what would you do to have a baby? And the answer is almost 99%, anything and everything. I said, well, would you be open to changing your diet? And it might be some simple things, because I promote fasting as one of the most important things. I recommend 1 meal a day. And keto, I think, many people could at least open to that. And that's why I say, listen, let's open up to maybe adding the fat, cooking the carbs, and limiting them. And if you can go on the carnivore side, I always say that's the master level. And I don't know if I post a lot. You've probably seen some of it, because my focus in this is if I can help coach and be a cheerleader for what you're doing, and share people like yourself and your books. I think that's important for all of us, because as a physician, I know you probably, like I, first went into this because you wanted to help people and not hurt people. And so much of what I learned is that we're hurting people, drugs, surgeries, and the wrong dietary recommendations. So I share something called the baby's way: bacon, eggs, butter, beef, ice cream, and salt. And
Yeah,
it's my ice. What's
now,
that?
I want to get into your ice cream. I saw you post that the other day, but before we do, I want to ask you, fertility rates are going down. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure you're aware of that. I mean, we've seen fertility rates trending down. We're constantly reminded men's testosterone rates are dropping. I know that in literature supports this, that dietary cholesterol supports the synthesis of cholesterol. I assume it probably has an impact on estrogen, progesterone, and some of these other sex hormones. I mean, it would just make sense. It's in the synthetic chain. But do you think low-fat diets, the emphasis on low-fat diets, has had an impact on fertility rates potentially?
Well, I know the plant-based, low to no animal fat is a killer, and that's been our biggest problem. And so, it's been so clear to me that ultimately we're dying from our diets, and that's it. That's a single cause of every single disease in the ICD-10 book and beyond. If everyone would simply go to at least a keto and fasting, it would help. But if they went carnivore, it's a game changer. And I believe, yes, all the rates of disease are on the rise. My best friend Dave was an amazing PM&R physician, 52, lymphoma, dies 3 months after diagnosis, and he was the epitome of health and wellness. My sister died of diabetes. She had it since age 4. And as I dug deep and I read everyone and listened to everyone, it was simply we're giving the wrong advice for a human being. We are lions. We're not pigs, cows, and sheep. And ultimately, we are led like pigs, cows, and sheep. But carnivore leads us to lead, not to be led. And so that's one of the most important things that I believe is the single thing that we can do as healthcare practitioners is stop lying and stop lying around and doing nothing. We got to get off our, what, and do something.
Yeah, I don't. When you say stop, I don't know that many people know that they're putting out information that's not helpful. I mean, they're bought into the. I mean, I was. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I just didn't know. I mean, it wasn't anything I'd looked into. And when you're in your own sort of niche, medicine is so specialized, you don't even look up. I mean, I don't care about the kidney. I don't care about the kidney, the heart. I don't care about the skin. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, man. Give me the bones. And and everybody's got their own particular niche on that. When you talk about like there's a prey and a predator mentality, and you do see that, and you see the diet impact. I think it clearly impacts mental health. I've seen that over and over again, and it does change. It changes your outlook. I mean, it's sort of weird that we see that your diet can change how you feel about things emotionally and socially, and I think that's a real thing. What do you find, as far as, things that people would not think were related to diet, particularly around in your field, like for instance, let's say uterine fibroids, they can impact fertility because of the mass effect. You get a big giant friggin' fibroid and it's a mass, and endometrium, you've got all this extra growth. And when I think of that, I'm thinking, man, maybe there's some role for hyperinsulinemia in here, but what are your thoughts around those types of things?
Well, I spent 5 hours in the operating room today taking out large 20 fibroids in one woman and 2 in the other, but the 2 in the other were 5 times bigger than the 20 in the other. And my theory is simple. Every organ system of our body is at risk of inflammatory events stimulated by plants. Plants are ultimately it. I don't think insulin is the cause of any disease. I think the cause of disease is plants are essentially all sugar. And whether it's glucose or sucrose or fructose or other glycans, basically glucose or sugars cause glycation, which damages the glycobiome and even more of the body. So I would say that the leading cause, because I suffered from all these things because I ate mostly a Mediterranean, Italian, plant-based diet for years and low fat. And I would say that that's it. Now, there are other plant particles. There are chemicals, hormones, toxins. There are antigens, lectins, oxalates, and phytates, which I believe are essentially dust and dirt that flow through every cell and molecule of our body, and they're a nidus of inflammation. Tumors, fibroids are just tumors. They're not cancerous mostly, but they still have a nidus of inflammation. That's why I believe removing these fibroids and endometriosis is helpful, not because just the mass effect, but because of the inflammatory effect of your body is basically reacting to things that shouldn't be there. And it's chronic, right? If you have you're eating these things once in a while, they're likely not going to get you and kill you unless you have an anaphylactic reaction. And far as I know, I don't know anyone that's ever had an anaphylactic reaction to ribeye steak. So I may not have chewed it right, and swallowed it too fast. But ultimately, I think those are the leading problems of the diseases. Plus, the colon, which is a fermenting box for us when we're eating a plant-based diet, makes heat, alcohol, aldehydes, and methane, which is right next to the prostate and the uterus, tubes, and ovaries. This is where we see major disease, which I think is a huge problem. And if we simply, the simplicity of this is amazing. The cause of disease is simply a high plant-based, low animal fat diet. That's it.
Yeah, interesting. So, but by that sentiment, then sort of vegans and vegetarians would have the highest rates of disease in the world. Wouldn't that make sense, potentially?
Well, they do in my clinics. They have more immunologic they call it autoimmune diseases. I don't think there's such things as autoimmune diseases. They're immunologic diseases because your body's reacting to some foreign particles or substance in your body that shouldn't be there. Or, again, fiber ferments. Well, fiber's not supposed to be in our body of any significance or frequency. And so that's another reaction to foreign particles.
So you're saying autoimmune disease is just really an immune disease, and some people say these particles attach themselves to our tissues, and our body recognizes now as foreign, and so we have that sort of thing. I'm thinking of things like type 1 diabetes, for instance. Clearly the beta cells are being injured somehow. Those are cell tissues, but is there a nidus for that? When you cut into a fibroma, is there a nidus around in the middle? Is there like a little nidus in the center or endometriosis that you could point to as a source of inflammation?
Not macroscopically, but like a splinter, lectins, oxalates, phytates, and I don't know the other thousands of other plant lectins are glycoproteins. Glycoproteins are not readily digested by our GI system. And when they then again, it's dust and dirt. Just imagine all the dust and dirt that gets in your car. Eventually, it all causes oxidative damage. Well, in our case, we have these amazing cells in our body that are the immune cells, which are also damaged due to a low animal fat, high plant-based diet. So I say, look, the thyroid gland is like the largest number one disease that we see. The thyroid medication is the number one drug that's given out around the world. And why is that? Well, I say the same thing. My sister, Maria Ann, developed diabetes type 1 at age 3 or 4. And I will tell you that as I'm learning more about the lectins, oxalates, phytates, and other particles from plants that are microscopic, flow around our bloodstream and then embed in these particularly sensitive cells. So it must be the thyroid tends to be more sensitive. The pancreas, the islet cells, more sensitive than other cells of the body. Some organ systems tend to have higher rates of cancer than others. And it just is, they're more sensitive to the abnormal dietary intake, which ultimately is killing us at ages that, in utero babies are dying from the same stuff. And then, infants and moms, and at every age you can imagine, we're suffering. Why some people it affects more than others, that's really a hard one to figure out.
Yeah. And you mentioned, that you feel that we have these manifestations of metabolic disease, and we sort of break in unique ways or different for every person. It's common. Like I think in many cases, things like arthritis and some of the musculoskeletal tendinopathies and tendinoses and peripheral neuropathies are metabolic manifestations. I think the orthopedic manifestations of metabolic disease. Let me go back because I'm interested because I've read your ice cream recipe. Sounds delicious. It's just a couple ingredients, cream, but you're using sugar in that. You're using regular old plain sugar, and a lot of people. And you just said sugar is a poison, and so how does that work?
Well, number one is our body has the ability to convert simple sugars to fat fast. And so, listen, we know that white sugar crystals are not natural to a human diet for the last 3 million years or so. All right. It's a drug. But so is a plant, by the way, because we did not eat plants of any significance or frequency either. But look, you got to reward and treat yourself at some time. If you want to have a glass of wine or some wine or something from time to time, I'd say the risk of that is pretty small. Everyone's claiming we're all addicted. We got these addictive personalities and don't touch it ever. I drive a car. More people are killed in a car. I fly airplanes. We're doing risky things, but if you are significantly feel like you can't tolerate any of this, don't touch it. But I don't believe the stevias and all the other stuff. I don't touch those things. I think white sugar, cane sugar has been around. I don't touch honey because I think it has a lot of other pollens and other, particles that I don't particularly agree with. I have my ice cream. You don't have to put the cane sugar in it. You could use anything. You can actually, it's really good with just the cream, fresh, sweet cream, eggs, egg yolk is all you need to use. I put a little bit of vanilla bean. You could use a little bit of chocolate if you like, but I maybe eat a little bit, maybe once a week or less. And I would say that for me, who literally eats steak only every day, and I do drink a little bit of coffee with butter, but again, I don't feel addicted to these things. I don't go around with an addictive personality. I enjoy them like everything else in life from time to time. I think it's reasonable. Our liver is capable of converting sugar to fat. But complex sugars, here's the difference. If you put complex fibrous plants in your bowels, they take days to digest. That means you're secreting glucose into your bloodstream all the time. Pretty much since the day you're born, if you're getting, soy formula, you're screwed. But I say the problem is that our bowels are full of plants and sugar is secreted into the bloodstream all the time. And that causes constant glycation. Again, if you ate fruits out in the wilderness, twice a year, your glucose is still in the 40 to 60 range, I bet. But if you have good liver function and insulin function, I don't think it's a big deal personally.
We do make glucose. You mentioned 40 to 60. So, I guess, I don't know if there's a threshold for this. It's interesting to look at, different numbers. If you look at the metabolism of Inuit from the 1920s, when they checked those, they ran relatively high blood glucose. Their blood glucose was in the 120s and they were free from disease. And so I'm just wondering if there's something unique about one thing that we know, and maybe maybe you don't, but fructose tends to be much more glycating than is glucose. Fructose is about 20 times more powerful at glycating than glucose is, which is, we don't have a lot of fructose, typically, but we make a small amount of fructose, endogenously, but consuming it may be a different situation. I don't know.
Well, that's absolutely true. Number one is you didn't eat plants of any significance. You didn't eat fruit of any significance. And you certainly didn't eat the number one leading drug around the world, which makes more money for people in this world is white sugar and beet sugar, which is ultimately the glycation is the leading cause of disease. And I don't know that I would bash fructose more so, other than we're using all of them way too often. If you have a little bit from time to time, your glycation is going to heal itself. I do. So I put butter in my coffee because ultimately coffee is a sugar, is a carbohydrate essentially. But the critical part about animal fat is it protects the glycobiome in the bowels. And since I grew up eating really pretty much no fat at all. I would say 99% of people don't even understand that most of their diet is no fat. It's oils. Oils are not fat. Plant oils are deadly for humanity, and they contain a lot of other chemicals that likely or partly want to control us and kill us.
So
And
you would not be a fan of things like avocados, avocado oil, olive oils, things like that, which we hear are full of polyphenols, and they've got these healthy omega-6s and on and on and on.
I grew up in LA, avocado trees, fruit trees everywhere. And olive oil was it. I've been cooking garlic, everything for years and years and years. I love cooking, and I'm the boringest cook today. I used to be like an expansive cook, but now I'm boring. But I think they're all ultimately deadly because, again, they're all bottled. They're industrial produced. No matter, even if it's just a pressed oil, I would say they're not good. Now, if you're a vegan, okay, this is where maybe avocado oil, olive oil, or coconut oil may come in, but I think we're saying it away just because if you're there and you got to start up someplace, what can we do to help you, wedge into it a little bit?
When just at the beginning of this interview, you ran off a litany of maladies that you were sick, kidney stones, and this. I can't remember all the things you said, about 10 different things. What does today look like for you? Are you basically free of all that stuff?
I'm a little neurotic. I will tell you that, listen, I got a herniated disc probably around 15 years ago. I ran to the orthopedic guy next door to me in my office in Syracuse, and I wanted surgery right away. The guy said, no. Okay. Now I suffered for about 5 years with the belts and the, whatever the exercise were, and literally no more, nothing, no joint pains, no backaches, nothing. And again, I say the 5 causes of disease are 4 of them are all plant related. The sugars, the antigens, the chemicals, the fermentation in our GI tract. Again, they come with the microbes. And then the fifth one is excessive exercise. I used to love running, biking, swimming, weights, probably since I was a kid. In high school, that was the one thing I loved to do was weights. I never did really heavy stuff, but I say light weights, stretching, you got to move the body. I do deep knee bends because I want to know that I can still get to the floor and get up. And I think those are the critical things in all this, but physically, nothing. My brain, my energy, my vision of life is expansive today. And, this is the thing. I grew up, I was ADHD, OCD, dyslexic, couldn't read. I got to tell you, I had 6 years undergrad to go to medical school, didn't get in the first year. I didn't get into an OBGYN residency because I wasn't the top of the class. And a lot of it was because I wasn't a great reader and test taker, but I love science and math. I was good at those 2 things. And I think those are the things that got me to this place. Plus, I've learned that science and medicine is snake oil in so many ways. Unfortunately, I say it not in a negative way to the doctors that are there doing the hard work. I recently went through a patent lawsuit. That I'm learning that people have patents in medicine that maybe the science isn't so straightforward. But the mission of medicine is money, and not making men and mommies masters. And what I'm learning is what we're teaching is the way to get to the master class.
Yeah, I think that, your point about money, if you look at the trends between, if you look at the graphs over the last 30, 40 years on the number of physicians and the number of hospital administrators, and it's an order of magnitude difference. I mean, we just have all of it's become business, and hospital administrators and, and the medical administrators, which are running it like a business. Well, I mean, it is a business. It clearly is. And you're right. The bottom line is the bottom line. And if you're not meeting that, it's inconvenient. And I found that out the hard way. Let me ask you, as far as, you said you're eating. So what do you eat? What do you look like? What are you eating right now? Because there's different people with different versions of a carnivore diet. Some people are including eggs and fish and organ meats and this and that. What does your diet look like day to day?
I don't know if you could see this, but basically, I eat a snake river, either
Yeah.
gold or Wagyu-ish. It's an American Wagyu steak every day. Now, I don't eat the whole thing every day, but that's what I eat pretty much every day. I eat duck liver. That's pretty much it. I sometimes will have a few scoops of my ice cream. I put salt, but I take all of the fat from the pan. So I cook my steak in a pan under the broiler. In my kitchen, I have a great fan that sucks all the smoke out. I often will cut the 50-ounce steak into 5 pieces. I eat about that much a day. I'm 5'6", 145 to 150 pounds. I keep a little fat on me just in case the famine shows up or I get sick. But I did get the vaccine. I'm not a big fan of them. It was required for me to go to the hospital, but I haven't had COVID to my knowledge. I will not test, and I have not tested. But I do coffee in the morning, 1 or 2 cups with butter. I drink water throughout the day. Every so often, I might go in the kitchen at the office and there might be some salami or cheese, but I stay out of the kitchen 99% of the time because when I see food, I want to eat food. My refrigerator has eggs, butter, cream, steak, liver, and that's about it. Nothing else. And so I keep my food exactly what I'm going to eat, and I stay away from everything else.
Yeah. And you said you've been doing this, for quite some time now. You said 11 years. And so you've been eating, bacon and butter and, eggs and steak and all the saturated fat and all this dietary cholesterol. Surely you have heart disease.
I have high cholesterol.
Yeah.
That's the best thing you can have in life. I've done all the studies, read everything. We know this. My parents had high cholesterol. They both lived to 94. My grandmother, 104. And I guess I don't go to the doctor. I stay away from doctors in general. Now I'm a doctor. I see a lot of patients. I'm a very busy guy. We do a lot of tests. My father had heart disease, but my father had a bypass at about 80. Lived another 15 years and didn't die of heart disease. His wife died a year before him, and he was done. And that's what I think my father died of. But but my parents did have hypertension, and they had some dementia and those sorts of things that set in. But I would tell you that overall, I think I could die tomorrow, and everyone will say, "See." But from everything I experience, I see, it's if all my diseases are gone and I didn't take a drug to make them go away, then something's going on in this. And so we all know that the fat as the cholesterol as the cause of heart disease is fake. The cause of heart disease is glycation and a plant-based diet. That's singly it. Our vessels are glycated. The glycobiome is the most important thing that most people don't even talk about, don't even know about. Yeah, that's it.
Let's talk about that, the glycobiome, because a lot of people haven't heard that term. So what do you mean by glycobiome?
Well, there's a sugar coated layer on every cell membrane, lining the bowels, the peritoneum, the vessels, the lymphatics, and everything. So there's this fatty. Every cell has a lipid layer that basically it forms its membrane, and within the membrane are proteins. 80% of proteins in our body must be glycosylated with a glycan, a sugar, and basically these sugars are our communicators. There are attachments. They are emotion. Basically, our HLA, our blood types are all determined, and so is COVID mutations determined by a glycan, a sugar. So, this is something that I never heard. I show this and talk to medical students every day, and they're like, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. And so everyone thinks that sugar in our bloodstream is for energy. I don't believe it is one bit. Sugar in our bloodstream is actually in our cells is for glycosylation, because if every neurotransmitter must be made faster than you and I can ever imagine, it must be glycosylated to function. So there's the endoplasmic reticulum inside the cytoplasm makes proteins from amino acids. Okay, the amino acids and proteins are then transported to the Golgi apparatus, where they must be glycosylated in order to create their normal function or turn them off. And so you must have a fair amount of glycans in your blood in order to provide that. The question always comes, well, glucose is our fast energy and fat is our later energy. But that never makes sense to me, because fat and lipids and cholesterol, you don't have anyone that has none in their body, their cytoplasm. And we do know that anorexia dies fast, and obesity dies slow. The liver's number one function is to make fat out of amino acids and simple sugars. Liver failure patients are emaciated and have no fat in their body. And type 1 diabetics that are not treated with insulin are emaciated and skinny because they cannot make fat. So these ideas are a little radical to what I've been taught, but it took me a while to figure out why my sister Mary Ann died and my friend Dave died. They were healthy people. Sarah Hallberg recently died of lung cancer. And I listened to an interview with Peter Attia. And the question is, well, why did I die? Don't know. But ultimately, we must know. And we have to be honest with our community. And our community is our friends, our families, our neighbors, and everyone. And I think at the end of the day, we don't want to, because I was afraid to talk about carnivore for a long time. I was doing it and I was a little bit quiet. It's like keto. But I figured at the end of the day, we've got to teach all of us so our children, our children's children can learn. But if you read and learn about the glycobiology, the glycobiome, all cancer therapy, and even the COVID vaccine is all developed out of glycobiology.
Interesting. About when I'm listening, you say that we don't use glucose for energy, and I'm thinking about, I don't know how many times I learned the Kreb cycle in biochemistry, and then again in medical school. And you're talking about glucose is eventually turned into I can't remember how many ATPs now, 35 ATPs or whatever it was. How do we reconcile that data, that information with the Kreb cycle and some of the stuff, and saying we're not actually using it for energy?
Well, Otto Warburg and Hans Krebs worked in the same lab in Germany, and they were under the same pressures as every other scientist in the world, that if they don't publish properly the story they are trying to tell, scientists, lies, damn lies in science. That's my motto today. And ultimately, if there's fat everywhere and there's sugar everywhere, why would the mitochondria use sugar when fat is right there everywhere? You can cut a 2-carbon particle out of fatty acids faster than you can convert glucose to pyruvate in the cytoplasm. So, again, if you just take a stopwatch and say, okay, glucose and fatty acids go, let's cut a 2-carbon particle and let's convert glucose to this, it didn't make sense. So what I had to figure out is, okay, so liver failure patients are emaciated. They're cachectic. They have no fat in their body. They have ascites in their belly. They have paper thin skin. They don't have any subcutaneous tissue, basically. So, but they all have elevated glucose and elevated insulin levels. So if every cell of the body makes fat, uses fat, something didn't make sense. So type 1 diabetics have no insulin. Okay. And so they get skinny and they die. Many diabetics that are insulin dependent lose weight purposely by not taking insulin. So, and type 2 diabetics are simple, insulin resistance. Well, if you always have elevated glucose, isn't insulin supposed to be elevated when you have elevated glucose?
Well, I mean, they one triggers the other. Yeah, sure.
Right. So now the question is, well, why? So my theory is that as glucose and glycans, or glucose causes glycation to the liver, fewer and fewer liver cells are functional and able to convert glucose and amino acids to fat. So now as you keep that same amount of sugar in your body, your sugar levels go up because you're not able to convert them to fat. I mean, polar bears and bears, and you just look around the world, basically, if you're not fat in a famine, you're in the dead phase. And so we do know that, we talk about glucose like it's so important, but ultimately sugar and plants were not part of our diet in any significance for the last 3 million years. We're really talking about glucose as a drug. It's an added particle to the human body that's not meant to be there in any significance or frequency. And so, I know there's a lot of pushback on this one. I had a talk with one of my organic chemistry friends, Fran, and he said, "Well, gee, I just can't believe that." I said, "Well, what other system uses one thing 1 minute and converts to use another the next?" We know that we can survive for months without food, and polar bears and bears actually hibernate. They lose no muscle mass and they lose no bone density. They burn fat. They don't piss, poop, drink at all, and they gestate 1 to 3 or more cubs. I tell my pregnant patients who have nausea and vomiting, hyperemesis in early pregnancy, do not eat food. Your body is saying, do not put those poisons in this body because I want to protect you. Because, I see it so often. I get pregnant on keto carnivore. Then once I'm pregnant, I go back, bingo, miscarriage. It's so common. So again, these ideas are really radical, but I'm willing to put it out there because the science I know that is such snake oil in this world is sad to me. Sad.
Do you, I was just thinking about this. Do you, when you have somebody and they go to you for reproductive help and they get pregnant, are you actually seeing them to term? Are you their obstetrician at that point or no?
I gave that up 20 years ago because it was too hard to do both, but I enjoy OB and delivering babies. But we will help care for them for the first 8 to 12 weeks. But as a reproductive immunologist, I call myself, and which is basically, we are there to help guide them with their OBGYN, whether it's dietary or other reproductive immunology treatments. We use IVIG, Cimzia, Humira, Plaquenil, Prograf, Neupogen, Lovenox, aspirin. I mean, I got my toolbox of standard drugs for sure, but I work on sharing it used to be the diet. It may be backwards on your stuff, but it's now the way. It's, this is the part that I tell everyone throughout your pregnancy, 1 meal a day. And carnivore throughout pregnancy is the best thing. Breastfeed your baby. And then when your baby is done with that, your baby's a carnivore. And that's what we should be teaching humanity today.
Are you familiar? I'm not sure. There's a guy named Dr. Michael Fox. I think he's a fertility guy down in Florida. I think
Jacksonville.
Yeah. He does, I think, keto maybe or something like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in actuality, so I learned a little bit from him because he took care of a lot of PCOS patients, and he promoted Atkins, paleo, keto, and I may be misspeaking on exactly all those details, but I believe, to me, he was one of the first REIs that promoted this concept. I listened and learned from him and many others like yourself, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know if you had been aware of him. It sounds like you have been. Remind me how you've been doing this for a while. How old are you now, if you don't mind?
I'm 66.
66.
66. I feel 26. March, I'll be 67. I feel like I'm getting younger every day. And, my intention of life is to re-inspire myself every day. If I can do this and practice medicine until they put me down, all power to me. I'm more inspired to do this than anything these days, but I still love surgery and IVF and fertility treatments in general.
Yeah. You mentioned you take, you kind of run the pregnant women out to 8 to 12 weeks, or they're still under your guidance. Do you feel that it's safe for them to pursue a carnivore diet during pregnancy?
It's our optimal human nutrition for millions of years, most likely. And, I don't know what we ate 50,000, 100,000 years ago, but it sure wasn't kale salad, which I call nature's toilet paper, or asparagus. And certainly we didn't eat lean chicken. There's no human cultures that are chicken hunters. For me, chicken is like rabbits. It's lean. It's not good for us. That's why I really focus on the ruminants. Cows, pigs are good one. Obviously, they don't have the same gut as that. But and then lamb and sheep and things like that. But everyone's got to find the truth is you got to eat the fat. And I'd say throughout pregnancy and beyond, I think it's the very best thing because there's no requirement for carbohydrate ever to be eaten anyway. And gestational diabetes is on the rise, and women are dying in pregnancy. They're dying, I think, from the same thing you're talking about for everything else is metabolic disorder. Metabolic disorder is essentially pre-diabetes and diabetes. You may not have a diagnosis of diabetes or even a diagnosis of pre-diabetes, but if you're eating a primarily plant-based, low animal fat diet, you are damaging something. Most diseases are silent. One of my practitioners at 64 retired. 2 weeks later, she gets a stroke, diagnosed with metastatic pancreatic cancer and dies. And so more people drop dead of heart disease as a silent disease. And cholesterol and the statin BS, in my opinion, is not true at all. And so, we're learning. There's so many things I'm learning as I'm listening to you and many others that lies, damn lies in science. Mark Twain, lies, damn lies in statistics. Basically, we can make data and statistics look like anything. I say, stop doing the measurements, stop getting all the tests. Enough is enough. Listen to people like Dr. ShawnBaker and others out there that are teaching something that is radical. But we need radical in this world. As younger and younger people are getting cancer and all sorts of diseases. It's sad. And standard American doctors need to step up to the plate.
Yeah, I think that's important, and we're seeing more and more of them willing to do that, and I think that it, as you said, a few years ago, you might have been hesitant to talk about this, and now, some of us have been talking about it, and we've taken our arrows. I mean, believe me, I've been dragged through the mud plenty of times about this, and, here I am, I'm still out here, sounding the alarm because I think it's important for not only individual health, but the health of our society in general. You're in New York State. I know you've got, I know you're upstate, but I know you've got a mayor down there in New York City, which represents a significant portion of the population in New York. He's promoting plant-based centered life, I think is how he said it. He's got this push that we all need to go pseudo-vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan, like Mark Hyman, promotes with the meat as a condiment and everything else should just be a bowl of grass or, obviously I'm embellishing a little bit, but what are your thoughts on that sort of trend that we need to all go and become vegan for the animals, or vegan, more importantly, vegan for the environment?
Well, the environment has been screwed up by plants being planted in monoculture, and they take away the grazing land for those beautiful animals. That is what we're meant to eat. We know that there's a lot of promotion of something that people believe in because they're highly manipulated by the masters who want to keep the masses meek. And so meat makes us the masters. And I think that's it. So, you can't fight against things. You got to fight for something. That's one of the things I'm learning in this journey. I've been reported to my state licensing board over this. I just had someone that, 5 pages of my license should be taken away. And then my hospital that I practice at, I teach medical students. They basically said, I can't teach the medical students if I talk about this anymore. And the doctor that told me this was a diabetic, and it looked like he had no legs from the complications. And so it saddens me that we're at this, but what do? I keep on talking about it. I write more about it. The students today were like, their brain was like spinning on this stuff that we're talking about. And more, I think, our job is carnivore for medical students, carnivore for moms, carnivore for doctors, carnivore for students. And, I know that what they're pushing, you can't even bring whole milk or something to New York schools, which, it is crazy, but we got to step standing up to the plate. The lions must lead the lambs. That's the only way this is going to happen. And my bit is they will come forward when they begin to hear and see. And there's only one scientific project that everyone needs to do, and that's on themselves. Because, I can tell you, as I read this stuff initially, I'm like, no way, no way, no way. Show me the papers, show me the studies. And then I did it, and I'm like, holy shit, like amazing.
Yeah, that's often what it takes. There, like I said, you can read every study. And there's so many studies you can read to support whatever you want to believe in. There's a study for it; they can show you that. But at the end of the day, it's got to work for you. Dr. Kiltz, we've gone through an hour. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Please share how do people can follow you on social media or any other way you want people to be aware of you.
If you just go to drkiltz.com and Google my name, Kiltz, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and we're all working to share the same story. I say we all need to connect and co-follow everyone, because that's going to connect more stars, and it's going to shine this light that is so critical in this world. So thank you, and to everyone on your team, God bless you guys. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, thanks, and thanks for everybody for sticking around for it's just two of these today. So anyway, Dr. Kiltz, have a good one. I'm sure I'll talk to you down the road. Take care now.
Bye-bye. God bless you. Bye-bye.